After Indiana's comeback win over Ohio State on Senior Day in Assembly Hall, Mike Woodson was visibly emotional, as in many of Indiana's wins down the stretch of this season. The Indiana players have really rallied around him and sort of mobbed him emotionally when good things have happened. There's a post-game interview with CBS, who was broadcasting this game, and Mike Woodson is kind of in the moment, surrounded by his team jumping up, dancing around him, a couple people with arms around Mike Woodson, and kind of just prompted, right? Thrown right to him. Hey, what are you feeling right now? This is your last game as a head coach at Assembly Hall. How are you feeling? And immediately, Mike Woodson's own words, quote, maybe I'm leaving too soon. I don't know. He then went on to describe the game and how emotional he is departing this program. And then he was mobbed by his players. And then Anthony Leal and Luke Goody and everybody else put him in the center and danced around him, hugging him. The turnaround that Indiana has shown just visually in terms of interest and care for this season has been multiplied by 10 since Mike Woodson was announced that he was no longer the head coach of this team going forward. They won 5 of their last 7 games. They were competitive in every single game. They had chances to win a bazillion games, and they won 5 of them. This team is a different basketball team. Woodson does deserve credit for that, but to say maybe I'm leaving too soon, I don't know. Are you okay with that being a quote from Mike Woodson?
I'm very okay with it. Very okay with it. I do think the only aspect of it I'm not okay with is like I do the idea of Woody spinning this like it was his decision to leave is hilarious to me. Like there's more to it than just what Woody wants, but I'm very okay with it. And the reason I'm okay with it, G, was it Thursday or Friday we did the Indiana coaching search video where we listed out the new candidate? I think it was Thursday.
Yeah, maybe Thursday.
I think it was Thursday. And Woodson just clinched his third postseason berth in 4 years. The guy that is on the list, Brad Brownell, not trying to be disrespectful, 3 turning berths in 15 years. If I'm Woodson, I'm like, oh, this is your guy? Y'all did all this? You wanted to start the coaching search early and that's what you came up with? Like, this is your king now? Oh, no. Like, maybe I am leaving too early. Do you guys know what I just did? Type of thing. So I love it. I mean, his resume, like obviously you're at Indiana. If Brownell was at Indiana instead of Clemson, he would have more than 3 turning berths in 15 years. Don't get me wrong. Like there's an aspect to the resources available, of course.
Fact checking, gonna be 5 in 15
Gonna
this year.
five,
But
yeah,
still, your point stands. 5 turnovers in
33%
15.
versus 75%. Like
Yeah.
I listen, not a math guy. Definitely didn't get the greatest grades in math. Still, like I know Woody's done more in the last few years, though. Like I just think it's one of those things where like, yeah, that's your captain, like that's who you guys want, that's the best you came up with. Um, and obviously it would be more, like I said, but I do like it. It's a little bit of gamesmanship with him. It's a little bit of like, hey, like maybe I am your best candidate for this job. Are you sure you don't want to just run it back for one more year with me? And then like give it a go next year. If I'm an Indiana fan, the answer to that still probably no. It's still probably no. But I will say this, and I think I said it in the coaching search video we did. To come up with that candidate list after you run Mike Woodson out in January, and granted, Mike Woodson did a lot to himself with underachieving with this roster. Um, there's some program issues here. Here, it's not just Woody. There's some program issues here, top to bottom, that I think Indiana is trying to run away from and not kind of solve. Um, and Woody kind of fixed some of those program issues by announcing he was leaving with this current group at least. And we got the Indiana that cared again. The problem is, are we 100% sure it's Woodson's fault they didn't care in the beginning? And I kind of think that's the tune I'm changing a little bit, where it's like I personally blame Woodson for why the team was showcasing some of the lack of effort. Now that I'm watching them play after he's announced his retirement or whatever he's calling it, I'm not sure it's actually Woody's fault. And I think there's going to be some carryover into whoever is going to get the job next, which also might be why some of the candidate list looks the way that it does look.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you mean by that? It's not his fault. Whose fault is it?
I think it's a top to bottom program thing. where it's like there's some issues in house that maybe like we don't know about, right? Like I kind of to compare it to like professional sports, ownership, GM, there's stuff going on in the front office. Maybe we don't know about it as fans, but it limits who wants to go there. Um, Looking at that coaching candidate list, and that's the candidate list before some other jobs potentially could open up too, right? Like there's a world the Texas job opens. How does that change what the Indiana candidate list looks like? I feel like people don't necessarily want to go to Indiana. Um, and I think there's issues that are causing Woodson's exit that's also limiting who could be brought in. And to me, like that's a program issue, not necessarily a Woodson issue. And I do think I blamed a lot of it on Woodson, and maybe I was wrongfully doing that.
Yeah. Okay. I think I agree with you. I'm trying to think like what flipped, right? What flipped from before firing or before announcement to after announcement. I called it 5-2 to end the season. That was the final 7 games. It was 8 games after they announced Mike Woodson will be done at the end of the season. They went 5-3. The 3 losses, a 3-point home loss to Michigan where they were tied with 2 minutes left. 4-point home loss to UCLA where they were tied with 2 minutes left, and a 9-point road loss at Oregon where they were competitive against a team that's pretty good at home. Then they have wins at Michigan State, best win any team in the Big Ten had this season, at Washington, and took care of business at home against Purdue, rivalry, huge comeback, at home against Penn State, and then at home against Ohio State to clinch their NCAA tournament bid. Let me repeat that last sentence. Indiana just clinched an NCAA tournament bid. That's what they did. This team was 14-10, 5-8 in the Big Ten, completely out of the NCAA tournament picture when they announced that he would not return. Since then, they have won so much, they are firmly in the NCAA tournament for the third time in 4 years. And what changed? Other than just like, oh shit, let's play for Woody, which is crazy to say out loud. What changed is Mike Woodson stopped trying to force the kids that don't care about Woody and this program on the court to please the
Yeah.
donors. That's what changed. The donors spent all their money on Cannon Carlisle, who objectively stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Bad player. The donors spent all their money on Miles Rice, on Umar Ballo. And look, those guys have still giving you solid things. Don't get me wrong. Umar Ballo has had really, really loud, awesome moments this year. Miles Rice has had games where he's been the best player for certain. But those guys visibly do not care the way Anthony Leal does, the way Luke Goody does. Um, those were guys that were here for paychecks. That's it. Mackenzie Mbako, another guy who has had moments where he really cares, another guy that really has had moments he hasn't. And Woodson stopped giving an F about all of this when he had to put in his final month notice, right? Oh, I'm gone anyway? Then I'm going to do what I actually think is best for the team. That's how Woodson has coached this last month, and it has yielded massive benefits, which speaks to, I think, what you're saying, right? Maybe this is such a difficult job that I don't know. The pressure weighs on you and makes you do things you don't want to do. Here's what I would say. Ultimately, it still falls on Woodson because he calls the substitutions, he calls the shots. He doesn't have to give in to donors in the first place. And he did. That's the way he managed his team for 3 months and the better part of the last 2 years. And it's been a disaster. But when his back was against the wall and he said, F this, I'm going to do what I want to do, he's been spectacular since then. And so has the team. They've played in a way that is actually fun to watch. I'm sure Indiana fans can be proud of the way this team is playing right now. So I would go a step further, Dion, and people are not going to like this. They're going to hate it. But this is my honest belief. I believe he still deserves this job. I believe that the way he has responded, and more importantly, this team has responded since announcing that he would be done, I believe this job should still be his. I don't believe whoever you are going to hire is going to have a better 4 year stretch in the next 4 years than Mike Woodson's 500 record against Purdue in the glory days of Matt Painter's program, mixed with 3 tournament appearances in 4 years. I simply don't believe it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you could hit a home run. But guess what? The guys you said were home run hires aren't here. And guess what? The guy you wanted, Dusty May, Mike Woodson's been better than in the last month. Since you said he was fired, Mike Woodson has literally outperformed Dusty May. So if that's the best case scenario, who are we going to get? I think it's being incredibly unfair to what Woodson has done. Look, they still have to do something, right? If they go to the NCAA tournament, Big Ten tournament, lose two straight games and it's over, then whatever, we mutually part ways. But you don't have a candidate that clearly is ready to take this job right now. You're still at the drawing board stage of this. Mike Woodson is visually showing you and verbally telling you how much he still cares about this job while his team mobs him and finally delivers the performances you wanted. I would let him keep coaching for his job, Dion. If you want to set the bar too high, fine. Tell him if he makes a Final Four run, he can keep his job. And let's see where this season goes and how inspired this team plays.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, like a couple of things, like I completely agree. I mean, first off, like within all of this, like there's the Mike Woodson I watched coach the Atlanta Hawks, and I watched him overachieve with a group of guys that really weren't that good, and they went to, I mean, they didn't go toe to toe with Braun, but they played against Braun in the playoffs, right? And then he went to New York, and he took over a team that had some like chemistry issues with Melo and everything, and he got them to the Eastern Conference Finals as well. Historically speaking, at the NBA level, Mike Woodson's been a coach that helps you overachieve. He's one of the best defensive minds in the game. And he was the defensive coordinator, I believe it was, for some of these like past Clippers teams, essentially, who have been some of the best defensive teams in the league as well. And it's just one of those things where like the guy we've been watching at Indiana is not the Mike Woodson that I know to be a coach, right? Like I'm not saying Mike Woodson's a phenomenal coach. Do I necessarily want him coaching the Warriors? Not really. Is he as incompetent as he's looked the last couple of years? Absolutely not. Like this guy's had a lot of success at the highest level of the game as an X's and O's guy. Now, if you told me Woody struggled recruiting, maybe, but as an X's and O's guy, like we had the guy we've seen the last 2 years is not the guy I'm used to seeing, which brings me to like my next point, and I think this is where Indiana really has to look in the mirror. Those donors are the ones controlling this team. And when Woody announced he was retiring and they kind of went away from what the donors want them to do, it galvanized this group and it developed like, hey, it's not just us against the world, by the way, guys. It's us against the administration. Like we've been doing what they want to do. We've been underachieving. And then who took the bullet? All of us in this room. So like, let's go show them, no, it's you guys. Like, stay out of our business. Like one of the worst things, college is becoming professional sports when it comes to financial stuff, right? One of the worst things in professional sports that head coaches hate is when the owners, the GMs, everybody in the front office has roster control and the coach doesn't have a say. They get given a roster and they're told to figure it out. Coaches leave jobs over that. And by the way, when you fire a coach in that spot, your candidate list is terrible. Look at the Bears for the last 30 years. They finally got a head coach that everybody's proud of. How? He got roster control for the first time. They were able to give somebody else roster control. That's why Indiana's coaching list looks the way it wants. Who wants to go to Indiana and they don't have control over who gets to go in the game? They don't necessarily have control over where the money's spent. And that's what Woody's proving is like, you guys told me to spend money on these guys. No, I have my guys on this roster already. I have my guys already, and I'm going to play my guys, and it's going to be better than when I'm playing your guys. And that's not going to make a Dusty May want to go there. Brad Stevens, who, by the way, could have roster control in the NBA while also being a head coach, isn't going to want to go somewhere and be given a roster and be told what to do with it, right? Like the guys you want are not going to go there because they don't have total control. And that's a program issue. That's an administration issue. That isn't a Mike Woodson issue. And I honestly, like my takeaway from all this is Woody didn't get a fair shot. And whoever is going to take the job next isn't going to get a fair shot. And until you change things up top, you're going to continue to be in this limbo phase where you're always going to have a new coach every couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good statement on the state of this job right now. But either way, however you feel, we kind of wondered what would Indiana fans feel like even if this season turns around. I think they're enjoying this right now, and they should be because this team could make a magical run to like a second weekend, and we'll remember this as like Mike Woodson went out on top, as crazy as that sounds.